Recently, I came across a video message by Jamaican writer Marlon James, where he talks about the difference between being non-racist and anti-racist. It is magnificent. It is worth hearing in its entirety. But it's also pointed. It might bring up some difficult feelings, and I want to ask you to allow those feelings to be. And as far as possible, just to stay with this message, stay with me during this sermon, step by step, unto the very end. Several months ago, he writes, in response to Ferguson, Baltimore, the killings of Freddie Gray and Tamir Rice, my friend Caitlin put up a Facebook post breaking down the difference between non-racism and anti-racism. Now, most of us are non-racist. Because racism is looked upon as some moral lapse, we feel quite self-assured, by simply not being racist. I'm not a bigot, for example. I don't sing that N-word when my favorite rap jam comes on. I didn't vote for that guy. I'm not burning any crosses. I'm not a skinhead. I don't, I won't, I'm not, I've never, I can't. What you end up with, he says, is an entire moral stance, an entire code for living your life and dealing with all the injustice in the world by not doing a damn thing. That's the great thing about You can put it off by simply rolling over in your bed and going to sleep. So why are you sitting at home and watching things unfold on TV instead of doing something about it? Because you are a non-racist, not an anti-racist. Now, he says, do this for me. Take the C out of racist and replace it with a P. I'm not a rapist. I'm not friends with any rapists. I didn't buy that Rapist last album. All these things that you are not doing. Meanwhile, people are still getting raped. Black boys are still getting killed. It is not enough that you do not do these things. You're going to bed with a clear conscience is not going to stop college students from being assaulted. Your thinking climate change is terrible is not going to stop climate change. You're being so assured that you're not anti-black, anti-Muslim won't stop the next hate crime. And it's wonderful that you recognize how brave gay people are when they're facing persecution, but they aren't the ones who need to be brave. We need to get active. We need to hold people accountable. We need to stop thinking that injustice going on in the world isn't to an extent our fault. We need to stop being non and start being anti. And that's the word. That's the word from Marlon James. This is what anti-racism, anti-oppression, and multiculturalism is all about. Araomc. That is what it is all about. And it is not that UUCA is doing nothing. Far from that. Far from that. But it is one thing to be accidental and casual in our approach, where we waver between moments of non-racism and anti-racism, and another thing entirely to be intentional and systematic and focused. Where the proposed congregational resolution says, be it further resolved that UUCA specifically commits to, well, that's where a more intentional and systematic approach is described in detail. The details are right there. We need to stop being non, and we need to start being anti. And the need is a legitimate one. That is the main thing that I want to say today. The need is authentic. It grows out of our identity as a beloved community. It grows out of we are majority white. We are majority white Unitarian Universalists. We are majority white Unitarian Universalists who want to be brighter. Each of these lines of we are gives us a good reason for taking a stand. Let's start with we are. We are. By that, of course, I mean that we are a religious organization. And some people will stop me right there before I can say anything further, right there, and say, they will say, yes, that is what we are, Mr. Senior Minister Man. Actually, I don't think anybody's ever said that to me, but you might be thinking it. Yes, we are, Mr. Senior Minister Man. Therefore, why are you bringing up such difficult and painful stuff in our midst? After all, the world out there is brutal. It is a brutal world out there. What I need on Sunday morning is relief from all of that. I need distraction from all of that. Give me a little bit of chicken soup for my soul. That's what I want. The world is brutal out there. So don't bring up politics. Don't mention he who must not be named. I'll let you decide who that is. Don't bring the strife and the struggle that is out there in here. Do not do that stuff, Mr. Senior Minister Man. And absolutely, there are times when we need our congregation to comfort the afflicted and provide spaces where we can feel just safe. But to envision a congregation as responsible for doing just that and for nothing else is simply untrue to the church's grander purpose of equipping people for life. I like to see the church as a place where we aspire to model the kinds of behaviors we want to see in our relationships, and we want to see in our places of work, and we want to see them in our political processes. We want to see them elsewhere. We are trying to be beloved community so we can take that love and we can increase that love elsewhere. We can extend that love to the places that need that love. Congregations are not hermetically sealed off from the larger world. Problems in the larger world, they're going to visit us here. There are going to be problems here. Any and all of these problems, including problems of prejudice and white supremacy, bias, that is, of course, unconscious, but that does not make it any less real. But if here we can ourselves be transformed as we work in that fire, if we can increase awareness, if we can learn solutions, it means that this will be a church that matters. It will be a church that matters. It is doing its job, the job of changing lives. We are. That is one reason for taking a stand. Another is we are majority white. Just look around. Just look around. And once again, I could be stopped right there. If we're majority white, why do we have to talk about race? It's a question that a colleague of mine in the United Church of Christ fielded recently. The United Church of Christ has a membership that is 87% white, close to where we are as a faith community. And as for the Reverend Dominique C. Atchison's answer, well, I'll bet you know what he said. But listen to his reasons why, because they're great. First of all, unless white people affirm that whiteness is a race like any other, unless they talk about it, wonder about it, appreciate it, trouble it, then the tendency to see whiteness as standard and default, it remains entrenched. That is the white supremacy problem we are trying to fight. Comedian Louis C.K. hits the nail on the head. He said, I read something in the paper that really confused me the other day. It said that 80% of the people in New York are minorities. Just let that settle in. I mean, shouldn't you not call them minorities when they get to be 80% of the population? That's a very white attitude, don't you think? I mean, you could take a white guy to Africa, and he'd be all like, look at all the minorities around here. And I am the majority. The second reason is this: how whites have a special role in dealing with other whites. Reverend Atchison writes, some of the white supremacy that still plagues our culture can only be defeated by the work and commitment of progressive white people. And that's who you are, most of you, because we're not all white in this space. But if you're white and you're here, you're progressive. We have been watching Donald Trump. That's the person whose name must not be. We have been watching Donald Trump, he says, gaining traction as a candidate for presidency by spewing racist, sexist, and ableist rhetoric. His words seem to be appealing to a segment of mostly white Americans who feel offended and somehow oppressed by movements for justice and equality. And while their mob-like presence is frightening to people of color, I believe it is also scary and disheartening for most white people. And there is only so much we can do as people of color when it comes to stopping this sort of hate speech and behavior. The hands-on work of dismantling this level of hatred falls upon white people who remember history and don't want to repeat that history, want to see that history come to an end. That's the Reverend Atchison. That is so good what he says. And let's take a moment with his comment about white Americans feeling offended or suppressed by movements for justice and equality. Working with such feelings is central. Now, I turned a small corner in my own mind the other day when someone questioned some language that I was using, and at first, I went to a place of feeling offended, and inside I could hear myself shouting, "PC! PC!" Me, Mr. Senior Minister Man. PC! But then I realized how I hate it when I introduce myself to another person as Anthony Makar, and the person goes, "Nice to meet you, Tony." Nice to meet you, Tony. Who gave them power to name me? If I want to be called Tony, I would have introduced myself as Tony Makar. I didn't introduce myself like that. Anthony Makar is what I said. So who gave them that power to name me? But what do you think would happen, suppose, if I were to be bluntly honest with this person and let him know exactly how I felt? What would he feel? Well, I bet he would feel offended. I bet he would. I'm just asserting my right to name myself. And he's probably going to think that I'm taking things too far. Why am I being so sensitive? He might think that I might be a little bit PC or like PC. Point is, significant work happens when white folks get inside that feeling of being offended and can see that feeling for what it really is, what it feels like for others to be claiming their rightful power, what it feels like when less privileged people are simply catching up. They are leveling the playing field. This is not a bad thing. This is not a bad thing. Therefore, white folks must reframe their feeling. Don't allow it to fester into resentment. Don't allow it to become squishy guilt. Don't allow that. Instead, channel that feeling into curiosity. Channel that feeling into compassion. Someone has come before you, and they are holy themselves. See them with new eyes. See them as beings with the power to name themselves. You're going to give that power to them. You're going to give it to them. We are majority white. In no way excuses us from facing the Araomc challenge and staying merely non-racist. No, it is just yet another compelling reason for taking a stand. But perhaps the biggest one is this. We are white majority Unitarian Universalists. Araomc just flows out of our religious nature. And part of it has to do with freedom, how we are a freedom people. 2,000 years ago, our people did not believe that Jesus was God. They believed in a direct, free connection without any intermediary. 1,500 years ago, our people didn't believe that church traditions were equivalent with God. They believed that the freedom way to the source was the Bible alone. 200 years ago, our people did not believe that Christianity with its Bible was the only way to the sacred. They believed that the freedom way to truth could be found in all the religions of the world. And now, right now, what we are saying is white culture is not the only form of freedom through which to reach out and touch the divine. It is not the only form of freedom. There are lots of other cultural ways to reach out and touch what is amazing. and divine. I have spoken of this before, but now here's something else you need to know about Unitarian Universalism's essence, what it means to be religiously liberal, because that is who we are. We are religious liberals, not political liberals necessarily, religious liberals. And what that means is to be in active engagement with the culture around us. Theologian Paul Razor says liberal theology starts with the premise that religion should be oriented towards the present, taking fully into account modern knowledge and experience. As a result, he continues, Unitarian Universalists and other liberals are not likely to feel their faith threatened in any way by new scientific discoveries, developments. Liberals tend to embrace them and incorporate them into their religious worldviews. This is how religious liberals have stayed culturally relevant and intellectually credible. It means that as America becomes more and more multicultural, so must we. It is what a Unitarian Universalist would do. WWUUD. On my bracelet. It's a pluralism not just of the head, but of the heart. That's what that is. We are white majority. We are white majority Unitarian Universalists. And finally, we are majority white Unitarian Universalists who want to be brighter. We want to be brighter. And this last reason is so very cool. So it's from researchers Sheen S. Levine and David Stark. This finding is that diversity improves the way people think. By disrupting conformity, racial and ethnic diversity prompts people to scrutinize facts and think more deeply and develop their own opinions. Here's the story from the New York Times. To study the effects of ethnic and racial diversity, say researchers Levine and Stark, we conducted a series of experiments in which participants competed in groups to find accurate answers to problems. In a situation much like a classroom, we started by presenting each participant individually with information and a task to calculate accurate prices for simulated stocks. First, we collected individual answers, and then to see how committed participants were to their answers, we let them buy and sell those stocks to others using real money. Participants got to keep any profit that they made. We assigned each participant to a group that was either homogeneous or diverse, meaning that it included at least one participant of another ethnicity or race. To ascertain that we were measuring the effects of diversity and not necessarily culture or history, we examined a variety of ethnic and racial groups. In Texas, we included the expected mix of whites, Latinos, and African Americans. In Singapore, we studied people who were Chinese, Indian, and Malay. The findings were striking. When participants were in diverse company, their answers were 58% more accurate. 58%. The prices they chose were much closer to the true value of those stocks. As they spent time interacting in diverse groups, their performance improved. Now, in homogeneous groups, whether in the United States or in Asia, the opposite happened. When surrounded by others of the same ethnicity or race, participants were more likely to copy others in the wrong direction. Mistakes spread as participants seemingly put undue trust in others' answers, mindlessly imitating them. In the diverse groups across ethnicities and locales, participants were more likely to distinguish between wrong and incorrect answers. Diversity brought cognitive friction that enhanced deliberation. The researchers concluded, when surrounded by people like ourselves, we are easily influenced, more likely to fall for wrong ideas. Diversity prompts better critical thinking. It contributes to error detection. It keeps us from drifting towards miscalculation. What do you think about that? What do you think about that? You know, someone was telling me that he and a friend were just alike, which on the one hand is great. That's a great thing. But on the other, it means that their alikeness, it's as if they are both looking right, which means they won't notice the bus that is coming at them from the left. They won't notice that. Not everybody is comfortable with anti-language. Not everybody's comfortable with that anti-language. They want a more positive vision. Anti-racism, anti-oppression, yes, but tell me more about multiculturalism. Tell me more about that vision. And we have one. We are majority white Unitarian Universalists who want to be brighter, meaning we are going beyond a majority white we to a we that is multicolored and diverse and fantastic and extraordinary. And no matter who you are, you get to be a part of that we, and that we feels like home. And you don't have to leave anything at the door to come in. There are so many good reasons in taking this journey, the taking a stand process. Risks as well, of course. You know, everybody loves Dr. King now. They love Dr. King now. Loves him for taking the stand that he took. Love him. But you know what? Back then, they didn't love him. They didn't love him back then. Some people. But some of his best friends, they didn't understand. A bunch of people in his community, worst enemies. We don't want to forget that about Dr. King. Everybody loves him now, but back then, we risk opening ourselves up to that. We risk problems. We risk misunderstandings. We risk complications. We risk snags. And what I am saying, let the good reasons carry us forward. Let's get into this thing. Let's let that rain fall. Let that rain fall. Let's get carried away by this. Let us listen to what needs to be said in a spirit of compassion. Let us dry the tears of those who are weeping. Let us not be skeptical that renewal may come, that we will see things in this space we have never seen before. I charge us. Let us not forget to be grateful. I charge us. Let us do our best to stir up in this space, in each other, hope and courage and faith. I'm wondering if you guys can come forward to bring that banner. Let's show the congregation. This is our Black Lives Matter banner. Oh yeah, parade that thing around. Now this banner, that's right, right there. Oh yeah, right, come on, yeah, that's right. Look at Candy's shirt. Look at Candy's shirt. You know, how many stories have you heard of white folks who got guns? They're standing like in front of the police, and they don't get shot. I mean, this banner is going to accompany me and all who march with me at the march tomorrow, Dr. King Parade. Now, I will plainly say that it is on me that we are marching with this banner. Under this banner, we march unofficially, because only the congregation, through a democratic process, can authorize statements made in its name. But I hope for a time when posting a banner like this on our building, very prominently, making it a 100% official statement of this institution, is going to be something we can just do, because we have taken an official congregational stand, because we know who we are. And that's just it, who we are. That is exactly just it. That is the whole thing that everything boils down to. Araomc isn't the name of some exotic food. Araomc isn't a word from some foreign tongue. Araomc is just what happens when we are more deeply who we are. Amen.
Our music for meditation is in the gray hymnal.